Talks 91.3 FM. And right now, let's get into that conversation. We've announced, for a while now that we will be engaging Mr. Segun Adaju, the president of Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria. He's joining us this morning virtually as we begin to analyze and review, as we begin to understand or engage him in a discussion on the state of energy, but we're asking one basic question: who really is managing Nigeria's energy sector? Mr. Adaju, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Great.
I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you loud and clear. Nigeria can hear you. The whole world can hear you. And it's good to have you join us this morning as we get into a conversation, particularly for residents of Lagos. There's been an announcement by the KEJA and the Eco electricity distribution companies that we will be going off for a while. Not off completely 24 hours, but from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily. Well, some people will say, we know they took get light before, so whether 8 to 5, it no matter. But for those who have access to power, regular power supply, what does this really mean? What has necessitated this?
Thank you so much, and good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria, and anywhere you are joining us from. This is Lagos Talks 91.3 FM.
Definitely.
Yes, great. There's an announcement that was made by both what we call the DISCOs in Lagos, the KEJA and also Eco electricity distribution companies, as regards some expansion and capacity in their system that they want to embark on. And because of this is going to last for about 25 days, I believe. And during this period, there will be, you mentioned the word inconsistent power supply, which is, you're right. So the number one, the reason is that there is an upgrade and expansion and capacity that the two distribution companies want to build. It is a good thing to want to expand capacity. However, in life and generally in every situation we notice, there will always be some discomfort when a new thing wants to come on. It's like you want to have a new baby. You remember the 9 months that the woman has to go through, and also especially the labor day or night. You also recall there are instances where maybe the third mainland bridge and the rest wants to be repaired, and we will have to go through some discomfort to get a better time and day. So I believe strongly this is what is happening. So there will be some discomfort in a couple of days. I believe strongly once it's well done and we come out of it, it should be better. Like you rightly mentioned, yes, some people say, after all, probably I don't have power before, right?
Yeah.
So that's the issue. And stakeholders and industry players like myself, customers, funders, and I believe that in the interim, there will be alternatives that you will have to use. Okay, and maybe that will take us to further conversation. So during this discomfort and even beyond, how can Lagos power itself? I'm very, very particular about states, particularly Lagos and other markets in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa, on how what we call energy access can be created. So
okay,
I'm sure.
Let's look at this. When we talk about providing unstable electricity for the next 25 days, because there has to be an infrastructural upgrade, is this the case because naturally we have a weak infrastructural energy infrastructure, to the extent that there is no alternative that the DISCOs or the Transco could provide? Because is it possible that we could have had an alternative channel that we could have transferred all this energy onto while we repair the other one? Or what really, or is this the only way it is done, or it could have been done?
So let me give a breakdown of, some understanding of what this is all about.
Okay.
It's actually the transmission company of Nigeria that is doing the repairs. And of course, it will affect the operations of the distribution company. So there are players in the power space. We have the transmission company of Nigeria. They own all the super grid in Nigeria, all the high tension bringing power from one location to another is owned by Transmission Company of Nigeria, which is also, you can say owned by government. Then we have the generating companies. They're the ones that generate power. Okay, they have turbines everywhere, that gas or hydro. They generate and they transmit through those transmission lines to discos distribution companies who distributes to our houses, right? So the transmission company is doing these repairs, but it will definitely affect what we call power evacuation and distribution in these areas. So it's like let me. I will also still use the analogy of repairing Third Mainland Bridge.
Yeah.
You ask me, is there any alternative? There are alternatives. Is either Lagos will have developed its waterways very well. At times you drive on Third Mainland, you see the waterways empty. You go to foreign countries, there are boats, there are, on the waters are busy. So that could be an alternative when you are constructing the bridge. It could also be diverting people to what's it called? This other bridge, Eco Bridge.
Yeah.
Or asking people to take another route. So for power, if you're saying, is there a better way to do this? I would say it's almost impossible to say you want to carry out repairs on the transmission grid and you will not follow this. There probably won't be any better way to do this.
Now,
okay?
One of the
But
reasons,
what are the
if I may
alternatives?
say, it's okay, maybe the alternatives. One of the reasons I brought this up is because I remember when the current Minister for Power, Adelabu, came into office, he spoke about, is it a SCEFA or SCETA? That he said a structure that he could put where, because he says if there's a grid collapse, everything goes down. That you have more of an alternative that runs and is able to carry the weight. So I'm wondering if that was in place, could this have been avoided? And using the analogy of pregnancy, these days some women that have the flat tummy and they have the good body shape who don't want to destroy it, they go for surrogacy. People carry their kids for them and it's still their child. So could we have done something like that with these repairs that we are embarking on?
Okay, so let me come to the real meat of what I represent. And by the way, I'm the former president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria.
Okay.
I was there for 6 years, but I'm still on the board of trustees of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Alliance, and also oversee West Africa on Google. Now, what are the alternatives? Honestly, the alternatives is that Nigeria should not rely on a super grid. That's what we should have in place. There should be decentralized grid system. We have that in other countries where it's not only one super line that brings power to Lagos, for example. There should be other means of transmitting power into Lagos. Secondly, is that distributed renewable energy. So where I'm speaking with you right now is completely powered by solar. So I am not aware that there's any outage. In 25 days, I'm 24 hours on power. I have consistent power, all right? Because I have an alternative, which is called decentralized or distributed renewable energy, which is on my rooftop. All other alternatives can, we also look at. Like I mentioned, there's a new act, it's called the Electricity Act, that has empowered states also to generate, transmit, and distribute their own power. So I believe very strongly that we begin to see some other parallel distribution networks that will be existing in a community or a state like Lagos. So when the super grid is faulty, we can have power through those other alternative transmission lines. And I know Lagos State government, through the Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, is doing, very hard work to be able to power Lagosians. The alternatives that people will use at this time mostly might likely be generators, which has its own negative impacts. There are, climate change issues, and it's even more expensive than an alternative like solar. That's why I am a strong advocate of decentralized renewable energy, powering yourself even when there is grid. In other countries like Germany, Canada, you still see people putting solar on their rooftops. Why? Because number one, they can check which one is more expensive. Is it the grid now that we're having band A? I mean, I would prefer to run on my solar than run on band A because band A will be more expensive for me. So even if it's regular, it's expensive. So these are the alternatives that Nigeria should begin to look at. And for me, it's the fastest way to power ourselves and deliver energy access
All right.
across.
Now, when we look at this, like you said, there are alternatives. But I'm glad you mentioned the Electricity Act 2023, right? Um, when you look at that act and considering what we're going through in Lagos or what we're about to experience, 24, 25 days of an inconsistent power supply, who really is still managing electricity or energy in Nigeria? Is it still with the states? Is it still with the federal government? Or are the states now in charge following the passage of the act? Who is in charge as we speak?
So in legislation and constitution, there's what we call concurrent list, which means an item that both the federal and the state government can legislate upon. All right. Power used to be on the exclusive list, which is for the federal government only. Security, for example, the army, police is on the exclusive list. All right. But power has moved from 2023 from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. That means both the federal government of Nigeria and the respective states that has prepared themselves, and I'll talk about that later. They're in charge of their power generation now. All right. So federal government and the states, they have that power to legislate,
yes.
to generate, transmit, distribute power.
The major question here is that following, yes, the power or the power sector has been decentralized. It's no longer solely the responsibility of federal government. But
Yes.
almost 2 years down the line, I think it was legislated, it was passed around, if I remember correctly, towards the end of 2023, around November or so, or December. Almost 2 years down the line, who is in charge as we speak? Have the states risen up to the competition? If a Nigerian has a problem in Lagos, who should we be holding responsible?
Okay, so I think it's about 2 years now. I think it's around May or June. I can't remember when this was passed, but it's 2 years. But there is a process to this. There's the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission that is at the center, owned by the federal government, that was in charge of regulating this sector before 2023 Electricity Act came into function. However, there's a process to it. For example, I think I don't know how many states now, maybe about 9 or 11, I can't remember how many states now, have had the transfer of regulation of their market to them. So there's what we call state electricity markets. I know Lagos is one. And let me pick particularly Enugu State. And why Enugu State? There is some issues around their market currently, and I will also like to use that as a case,
which we'll be getting into
case study.
Yes.
Exactly. But states that have had this regulatory responsibility transferred to them, they have the right and the power to legislate, generate, transmit, and distribute electricity in their own states. But like I mentioned, once an item is on the concurrent list, that means both federal and state governments have the power to do business in that space. But there is also a proviso that, if there's a clash between the federal and the state, there are provisions in the act on how that can be resolved, right? Because there will definitely be clashes, like we're witnessing in Enugu State. So they both have the power and they are both responsible. But like I said, there's a traction that you have to gain. There are processes. So it's taking some states 2 years to even get the transfer of these rights. I think it was, I can't remember the state that started very early. The first state that got this, I'm trying to remember before when.
I think it must have been Abia State with the
I think it's Abia State
that
or
power.
I'm trying to remember the state, but even with that early transfer of regulatory function and the market, there's a slow start. There's time to build, to set the laws, right? There's time to regulate the market. There's time for even those states to begin to even generate their own power. I know a couple of states, and I know Lagos states. I mean, because I support Lagos State as a consultant in the electric energy, markets.
Okay.
Lagos State is preparing very strongly.
All right. So I'd like you to do this for us. We'll take a short break right now. Now, when we come back, you tell us some things about Lagos State, and we'll look at the Enugu event and incident, and then we'll come to renewable energy, because a lot of people still see it as very expensive, and how sustainable is that? Do not change your dial. This is Lagos Talks 91.3 FM. We definitely will be right back. Welcome back to the studio right here at Lagos Talks 91.3 FM. 10 minutes to the top of the hour, and let's get into the conversation right now. We have Mr. Segun Adaju, a former president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, and he's our guest today as we engage on the state of Nigerian electricity, who is really managing the electricity. And I must say that he's also the founder of, is it Consistent Energy Limited? Yes, let's add that to it as well. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good to have you here. Now, let's go back to Lagos. So, as looking at Lagos, is Lagos prepared to provide electricity for Nigeria or for Lagosians? Is Lagos, or does Lagos also have the capacity to provide electricity for Lagosians? Then the third question, is Lagos, apart from being prepared, is Lagos ready or willing to provide this electricity? Are they taking the right steps?
Thank you so much. With my engagements and my work with Lagos, for about a year, up until recently, I was also a consultant on decentralized renewable energy to Lagos State, hired by the African Development Bank. And I still do some bit of work, thanks to the Honorable Biodun Ogunleye, the Honorable Commissioner, Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources, who has very ambitious plans. Let me use that word. So I will say that from my position as a consultant and also an external party, seeing what Lagos State is doing, Lagos State is prepared to power its citizens. Now, you remember that even Lagos has been forward-looking. I think over 20 years ago, Lagos had thought about this kind of market system with the Aeron Power, projections then. So Lagos State has recently set up his own electricity market. Okay, he's passed his own law, and Lagos was a bit conscious. Lagos did not rush into it. Lagos sat down and looked at all the possibilities. Okay, Lagos was one of those that initially prepared for this market, but they were a bit slow in coming up because they needed to do detailed analysis. So I can say Lagos is ready. Lagos has set up its electricity, Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission, and we have very credible people on board.
Is Lagos not over ambitious? Because Lagos has a plan of, is it generating 1 gigahertz of electricity, if I'm correct, over the next how many years? Is that not being over ambitious? Why do we even consider the infrastructure that will be needed to achieve that?
Okay, let me tell you, this is not being over ambitious, and why.
Okay.
Lagos gets just 1,000 averagely megawatts from the national grid. So out of the 5,000 plus we're talking about for the whole of Nigeria, Lagos gets averagely about 1,000 megawatts, 20% of it. However, Lagos and Lagosians, both industries and homes, are powering generators every day on the average about 15,000 megawatts. So
Every day.
if every day, the generator capacity, according to the analysis done by Sustainable Energy for All, Nigerian Energy Support Program of GIZ, the average capacity of generators in Lagos is about 15,000 megawatts, 15 gigawatts. So Lagos has the markets, one. And Lagos is also taking very quick actions to create opportunities to displace these generators. For example, there's a study that I mentioned that was done by Sustainable Energy for All. I'll be happy to share this with you after now. That shows clearly what the market possibilities are. So, number one, how can we begin to generate captive powers? How can industries begin to generate captive power for their businesses? And we are seeing some opportunities already, and people already taking those lead. How can we displace those generators? And I know Lagos State is also engaging with relevant stakeholders who have the pockets of money, investors who will bring their funding into Lagos and create an ecosystem that you and I can plug into and displace our generators. Because if we have 15,000 megawatts already and we are burning fuel on it, it's a simple business model of me transferring my expenditure on generator.
So let me ask you now,
investment.
which energy mix would you recommend for Lagos, considering the peculiar state of Lagos?
Okay, so let me start with what the national policy says. So there's a vision that's called Vision 30, and it says that by year 2030, Nigeria should be able to generate 30,000 megawatts of electricity, 30% of it that should come from renewables. Okay, so let me write on this. Now, for Lagos, if we have the infrastructure, now that's conditional. If we have the infrastructure, there's a mix of gas, a mix of I don't know which hydropower plant that is close to us that we can generate power from, but of course a mix of
maybe the one in
gas.
Ocean. Yes, go ahead.
A mix of hydro, a mix of renewables. I do not expect Lagos State to do less than 30 to 40% of its energy mix from renewable energy. And you'll be asking,
and when you talk renewable, are we looking at
Yes.
solar alone, or are we considering wind energy for the water side?
Oh, yes. Wind energy will be that combination. And Lagos State has done studies in this area. They've done mapping, they've done GIS analysis that shows the various resources. There's an integrated resource plan that Lagos State has done that shows the resources that are available in those markets and in those locations that we can use. Okay, so thermal is part, that's gas. We have, solar, we have wind. Even we have some level of biomass. Lagos generates over averagely about 18,000 metric tons of waste every day. That's also another opportunity to generate biogas, waste to power plants.
Yeah.
And I know there are investors who are already engaging with the state to take advantage of this opportunity. Lagos, like I mentioned earlier, is more positioned to take advantage of the Electricity Act of 2023 because, number one, it even has the biggest market. Number two, it has two DISCOs, distribution companies, exclusively in the state, serving the state. It's the only state in Nigeria that have two DISCOs, Ikeja Electric and also Eco DISCO. But meanwhile, some DISCOs are serving about 5 states. Enugu distribution company, I'm sure, I don't know how many states it's serving now, but Lagos is peculiar in its position. And like I'm saying, several plans have been put in place. Infrastructure is being planned. There's a study that's been done around decentralized and off-grid energy strategy for Lagos. I know also that Lagos is engaging with several investors, development partners. Lagos had its first Lagos Energy Security Summit this year, right? This year. Okay, that was the first one. And we saw a lot of people and businesses and investors who are already engaging with the state. I am very confident that Lagos is not too ambitious to say it used to be 1,000 gigawatts from renewables, from solar, but now we're moving to about 3,000 or even 5,000 from renewables alone. So by the time we add gas to it, the energy demand in Lagos cannot be less than 40,000 megawatts to really,
Okay.
really power the industries and all the households in Nigeria, in
So,
Lagos.
Mr. Segun Adaju, Adaju, we will need to have you back in the studio because you've not touched on the cost of generating this, what it will mean if we take away subsidy, what amount of subsidy we are paying right now, and how that affects us, and a couple of other questions like, are we attractive enough a market for Nigerians for investors to come? What quantity of investment or what percentage of investment will be coming from the state, or is it strictly going to be privately run? All this conversation we need to get into, but if we would like, we'll reach out to you later on for a follow-up interview sometime in the week, if that works for you.
That works for me, and I just quickly want to close to say, for example, there is a project funded by the ECOWAS, by the World Bank and implemented by ECOWAS,
Yeah.
and it's called ROGI, and it's to also create energy access for the underserved communities, across Nigeria. My company is privileged to be part of one of the companies that's working with ROGI in Nigeria, and these are opportunities to generate investors resources to deploy in the markets.
All right, then. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We do appreciate that insight.
Thank you.
As we continue the conversation. It's exciting to have this, to know where we are, but you heard it now, 25 days, there'll be epileptic power supply. Just get ready for that. It's necessary. It's like a woman who is pregnant. You need to go through the process. But how will this be managed? Well, we'll get into that later on. But thank you so much for your time, Mr. Adaju, and have a great day.
Yes, have a good day.
All right.